This is a short discussion on cost terms, concepts, and classification of costs. Actually, this is a component on the subject on information and data analysis. When we talk of decision making, most of the time we base our decisions on relevant cost and information. When we talk about information, as we all know, this is data that is processed to come up with a set of data or information that is relevant for decision making. Take note, if a data is processed and it becomes relevant to a decision, then it is considered as an information. So, if you process a data, and then hindi siya naging ganun ka-relevant for decision making, it's still considered as data. Now in MS, most of the data and information that we need is based on revenue and cost information or revenue and cost data. And revenue data has the same behavior with that of cost data. So in this presentation, we're going to try to understand the basic concepts of costs so that you will know when they will become relevant for decision making. Okay, so let's start. Basically, when we talk about costs, you can classify them into two. Okay, anyway, let's go back. You have two classifications of costs. Okay, you have here your GAAP costs, your generally accepted accounting principles, and then you have your non-GAAP costs. Now, what's the difference of these two? When we say GAAP costs, they are found in our financial statements. Okay, and you have your manufacturing and non-manufacturing. Okay, so sulat ko na nga. When we say non-GAAP costs, they are not found in your financial statements. Okay, so not in the financial statements. Most of the time, they are used for decision making. Okay, for GAAP costs, okay, since they are found in financial statements, they are used for financial reporting purposes. Okay po. Since these are costs found in our FS, okay, may mga standards siyang sinusunod in the preparation, valuation, and presentation. That's why it's called GAAP costs. For those costs that are used in decision making, since they are not found in the financial statements, okay, they are not governed by standards. Now, I'm not saying that there are no standards. There are still standards applicable, but, well, it is flexible, no? We are flexible in the application of these standards, okay? Now, starting with our GAAP costs, no? Our GAAP costs are classified into two. You have your manufacturing and non-manufacturing costs. Starting with the manufacturing cost, you have the three basic costs. Okay, or review lang, no? From cost accounting, you have the dirty man, the dirty lady, and then you have here your manufacturing overhead. These are the costs that are incurred in the manufacturing of a product. Okay, so ayon, any cost that cannot be classified as direct materials, direct labor, or manufacturing overhead is considered as a non-manufacturing cost, which we will discuss later. Okay, so ganun kasi ang gap eh. If you cannot classify this into this type, then definitely it's this kind. So ganun. If it's not manufacturing, then it's non-manufacturing. Amongst your manufacturing cost, if it's not direct materials or not direct labor, definitely it will be classified as a manufacturing overhead because it's a manufacturing cost. But, okay, it's not part of your direct materials and direct labor. Okay po? So, ayun. Let's discuss further. You have your direct materials. Your raw materials, these are your raw materials that become an integral part of the product. Okay, magkaiba po yan ha. okay, your direct materials is different from your raw materials. When we say direct materials, they are pertaining to your used raw materials. Okay? So if you were asked, what are your raw materials? These are just lumber. Kunyari, lumber is a raw material. But when you're asked, what's your direct materials? Well, how much lumber did you use in the manufacturing? So, pwede mong sabihin na, 100 board feet. Okay, that's how you measure your lumber. 100, mali-mali na naman. Kapag may mali, I'm not going to edit my video, so please feel free to comment, no? And make suggestion or ask questions in the comment section below. Anyway, ayan. What's your raw material? Lumber. What's our direct material? Well, it's 100 board feet kasi yun yung used lang na lumber. Okay. Now, they become integral part of the product. When we say integral, the product cannot exist without your direct materials or without your raw materials. Okay po? So, that's the meaning of integral. So, sir, when do you say that it is integral? Well, maybe it's majority. No? Majority of the product is made from your raw materials, or for example, the product will not function as it is expected without this material. Okay, so that's the meaning of integral part of the product. And it can be conveniently traced directly into it. That's why this is also known as your direct cost. All direct costs can be easily traced. Well, now, when we say traced, okay, you can say estimate siguro, estimate, okay, or compute. Ayan, compute. So, for example, okay, you were asked, based on your table, okay, assuming that this is a wooden table, okay, can you estimate how many board feet of lumber was used to come up with this table? Ayan. So, susukatin mo, ilan ba yung nagamit dito in terms of its legs and yung surface, okay? If, okay, sabi mo there's 2, sukat-sukat lang, no? And then you have your 2 board feet. There you go, 2 board feet of lumber. Okay? Ibig sabihin, na-trace mo na. So, the cost of your direct materials can now be estimated. If each board feet, okay, is actually 100 pesos per board feet. So, can you trace the cost of your direct materials? Very easy. That's 2 times 100. You will now have 200 pesos, okay, as the cost of direct materials in this table. Okay. Next, you also have your direct labor. Again, direct labor is a direct cost. It can be easily traced. Okay. This one pertains to the cost of your labor. Okay. So, for example, going back to our table, okay, so you ask Mr. A, okay, Mr. A, okay, how long did it take you to come up with this table? Okay, so sasabihin ni Mr. A, I was able to finish that for 2 hours. Okay, yan, 2 hours. Or titignan mo yung time card niya, it's 2 hours. And the rate, no, rate for 1 hour is, let's say, 500 pesos, highly skilled eh. Okay, so what is your rate? It's 500 pesos per hour. So now your direct labor cost is 1,000 pesos. Okay? So for direct materials, okay, let me just correct these two. That's 100 per board feet. Okay? This is 500 pesos per hour. So that's the meaning of it can be easily traced. A traceable cost can be estimated. Okay? So, a traceable cost is the same as direct cost. Examples of direct cost or traceable cost, you have your direct labor and direct materials. Now, manufacturing overhead are your manufacturing costs that cannot be classified as direct materials or direct labor. Thus, they cannot be easily traced, okay, to your specific products. So if they cannot be traced, they are not traceable cost. They are now called allocated cost. Okay, so you have your allocated cost, or you have your, ayan, you have here your applied cost. So for example, you have your indirect labor and indirect materials. Example of indirect labor. If your direct labor is, let's say, the cost of the carpenter who assembled, no, who assembled the table. Maybe an example of an indirect labor is, let's say, the helper, no. How do I erase this? Paano ba to? Ayun. Okay, so you have here your helper. Yung mga taga-abot lang, taga-linis, di ba? Dun sa plant natin, okay? Or maybe what else? What else? Indirect labor. Your supervisor, no, your supervisor, and the supervisor, the cost of the supervisor will be classified as indirect labor cost. And again, you cannot trace them, no? Like, sige, can you ask how much of the supervisor's supervisor's salary is applicable or traceable to the table that was finished? Wala, di ba? So, ayun. Hindi. Pero naman, pero hindi mo lang matrace. And then you also have your indirect materials. When we say indirect materials, example for this will be your hardware, nails, o kuko. Hardware, nails. Ganyan mo na lang. Ayun. Hardware, nails, okay? And then, ano yung pampakulay? Cutex. You have your paint. Okay, paint, or let's say varnish. Okay, you also have here your sandpaper, for example, no? So are they integral part of the product? No, actually you can have a table without the following. Okay, it can still function. Okay, so ayun, so they are materials but they are not direct materials. And you cannot trace the cost, no? Imagine how impractical, no, for you to trace the cost of the hardware nails. How do you buy hardware nails? They are per kilo, di ba? You buy 1 kilo and then you count how many number of nails are in 1 kilo, okay? So you divide that and then you will now get the cost per nail, and then you multiply that, okay? You multiply that by the number of nails used in a table. So that's the reason why we allocate or we simply apply them, because it's either they are impossible to trace, it's impossible, or it's possible but it is impractical. Alright? Like for example, what is my favorite overhead? Okay? What is over our head right now, no? You have your electricity or power. Can you trace the power consumed in one table? O, di ba? So, you need a separate electric meter for that. So, magbabasa ka pa. Baka mas mahal pa yung metro mo kaysa doon sa table. Okay, so those are now your different manufacturing costs. What are they? You have your direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Now, if you try to put these two together, you now have your prime cost. Why prime? Not because they are direct costs or not because they are traceable, but because they are the most important costs, no, in manufacturing. In the absence of one cost, you cannot come up with your product. So, no matter how talented or skilled your labor force, diba, your labor workers are, if there is no direct material or raw materials to process, they will just play tong eats. Magpo-poker lang yung mga yan. Okay? Or even if you have the best materials in town, but you don't have the labor force, okay, they are just the raw materials lang, okay, as is lang sila, they will not become your end product. Okay, so that's why they are called your prime cost. Your direct labor and manufacturing overhead are incurred to convert your materials or direct materials into finished goods. That's why they are called conversion costs. True or false? Okay, prime cost plus conversion cost equals your total manufacturing cost. True or false? This one is false. Why? Because okay, direct labor is a common element for prime cost and conversion costs. Okay? So, if you cannot classify a cost as a manufacturing cost, it's not a direct material, direct labor, or manufacturing overhead, definitely it is a non-manufacturing cost. So, it could either be classified as a marketing or selling cost or an administrative cost. Okay? So, what are marketing or selling costs? These are costs that are necessary so that you can sell, no, ayan, or deliver a product. Administrative costs naman, they are incurred to maintain the existence of the operation or the business, like executive, organizational, and clerical costs. Okay? One of the common questions that I get is that, sir, how do you classify depreciation cost? Okay. Well, it depends. Okay? If that is a depreciation of a manufacturing equipment, then it is a manufacturing cost. Is it a direct material? No. Is it a direct labor? No. Therefore, it is a manufacturing overhead cost. Okay, so ayun. But if we are talking about the depreciation of, let's say, an office equipment, then that is part of administrative cost. What about the depreciation of a delivery equipment? Then that will be part of your marketing or selling costs. Okay? So, ayun. What are product cost and period cost? Product costs are costs that you incur to come up with a product. They become part of your product. Okay? Therefore, these are your manufacturing costs. Ayan. What are period costs? They are costs that are incurred in the period when they are costs that are recorded in the period when they are incurred. Okay? So, every time you incur them, cost kaagad yan, they automatically become expenses. But for product costs, okay, they become part of our assets muna. Let me write that down. Assets, once these assets are sold or used or consumed, that's the time they will become expenses. So first, it's part of your inventory as an asset. Once it is sold, that's the only time it will become as an expense, as part of your cost of goods sold. Okay po? So that's your product cost. Tadang! Comparing merchandising and manufacturing activities, pareho lang yan. The only difference will be the inventories. Why? As you can see, for merchandisers, they buy the goods and then they sell the goods. Buy and sell. Dito, they still sell the goods, no? Okay? They still sell the goods. Okay? May sales pa rin siya. So, they still sell the goods. But instead of buying the finished goods, they buy the raw materials and then they produce the finished goods. Therefore, when it comes to the types of assets, everything is the same except for the inventory. Here you have the merchandise inventory for a merchandiser, and for a manufacturer, syempre, they buy the raw materials, they process that. If it's not finished, it becomes part of your work in process. By the time it's finished, it's now classified as your finished goods. Pag nabenta, o di, cost of goods sold na siya. Okay po? Again, merchandise inventory. Merchandise pertains to the type of merchandise lang, like your noodles, lard, sugar, and salt. Okay? Inventory, this is the number of a certain item at a certain period or at a certain point in time. Therefore, if you put them together, a merchandise inventory is your merchandise, diba? Your noodles, okay, the number of your noodles at a certain point in time. So that can be 10 boxes of noodles as of December 31, okay, 2020. Okay, so, ayun. Let's discuss further. Raw materials, this is what you purchased. Once they are processed and they are not yet finished, it's now work in process. If it is finished, it's now your finished goods. Okay, that's how easy it is. Okay po. Next, income statement between a merchandising company and a manufacturing company. Almost the same, except that for a merchandising company, since it is buy and sell, you have this account purchases for the finished goods. But for the manufacturing company, you have the cost of the goods manufactured. So that's how you compute the cost of goods sold. Okay? Basic inventory flows, but wala nakalagay dito. Let me just draw na lang. Basic lang. If you have your T accounts, no? Because this one is an asset, you have here the beginning balance and you have here the ending balance. Okay, from your beginning balance there will be additions, no? Like for example, your purchases, if this is, let's say, a raw materials purchase. Okay, anyway, undo muna tayo. Let me erase this. Okay, let's just discuss the entire inventory flow na lang. Okay, ayan. Okay, basically, you have the beginning, ganyan muna, plus the additions, okay, anything that will increase your inventory equals the total available, and then if you deduct the decreases, okay, like for example, what was used, ito, example, purchased, okay, purchased or manufactured, ayan, you have your manufactured, ayan. And then, i-deduct mo dito yung, let's say, used. Okay, or you have here your sold, etc. Okay, and you will now have your ending balance. So, if we're talking about, ito, kabisado na ninyo to. If you have your raw materials, your work in process, and your finished goods, since these are all assets, you have here your beginning balance, and ending balance, beginning balance, ending balance. Okay, kunyari nag-enjoy ako, beginning balance and ending balance. Okay, what are the additions in your inventories? Okay, you have here your net purchases. Okay, so if you add your net purchases with the beginning inventory, you will now have your total materials available for use. Okay, let's not use inventory. Let's just use, might mislead you eh. Let's just use raw materials. Raw materials naman dapat yan. Raw materials. There you go. Raw materials, work in process. Sign of aging talaga. Work in process. And then you have here your finished goods. Okay, so from your total materials available for use, and if you deduct your direct materials, you will now have your ending balance. Okay, your direct materials is your raw materials used. It will go to your work in process. So you have the beginning balance, okay, of the period, plus the direct materials, plus your direct labor, and your manufacturing overhead. Okay, also known as, what's this tree? This tree is your total, there you go, total manufacturing cost. That's your prime cost right there. That's your conversion cost right there. Get that? That's your total cost placed in process. Okay, so from your total cost placed in process, okay, you deduct your cost of goods manufactured because it's already finished. Ayan, it's no longer work in process. So again, dito baka malito kayo. Okay, this cost of goods manufactured will increase your finished goods, but this will actually decrease your work in process. Okay? Ayan. So, pupunta po dito yung cost of goods manufactured. If you add that with the beginning balance, that's the total cost or total goods that you can sell. Okay, total goods available for sale. Ayan. Okay, so from your tigas, you deduct your cost of sales or cost of goods sold. It's the cost of goods sold, and you will now have your ending balance. Okay, so that's your basic inventory flow. Dagdag bawas lang. Okay? So this one is a better presentation. Of course, you have your raw materials. You have your raw materials purchase, okay, or your net purchase. And how do you compute for your net purchase? No? Your net purchase is actually your gross purchase. Gross purchase less, no, gross purchase less your purchase returns, allowances, and discounts. Okay, so that's your net purchase. Sir, what about your gross purchases? Okay, gross purchases is actually your total purchase, of course, okay, plus your freight. And your freight in. There you go. Okay, so pareho lang. So you have your beginning plus your net purchase, less your ending equals your raw materials used, okay, which is now classified as direct materials. Okay, again, take note, direct materials is your raw materials used. We don't say direct materials used. Redundant na yun eh. It's like, paano ba? It's like saying, masakit yung headache ko sa ulo. Diba? That's your direct materials used. You add your direct labor and manufacturing overhead and you will get the total manufacturing cost. Okay po? And then from there, you add that to your beginning work in process inventory and you'll get your total cost placed in process. Okay, that's the total amount of goods or products that you started. No? You started during the period. Okay, and of course, you can finish, but diba, hindi mo natatapos lahat yan. Your cost of goods manufactured is your work in process that is finished. What is not finished during the period or what is not completed, ganun na lang, will now become part of the ending work in process inventory. Alright, so to continue, what is manufactured will now be reclassified, okay, or transferred to your sales department. Okay, you add that with your beginning finished goods inventory and you will get the total goods available for sale. This is how much units or how much goods you can sell for one period. But of course, if you were not able to sell all, you will have your ending inventory. Okay, so that's now your ending inventory. Yung hindi mo na ibenta. Okay, this one will now go to your income statement. Take note, all of this, no, all the following accounts. Okay, yung work in process, finished goods, raw materials are in your balance sheet. Okay, so this is the basic flow. Taran! You purchase the material, it becomes part of your raw materials. Okay, still part of inventories sa balance sheet. Direct labor, once it's incurred, because it is a product cost, okay, it's still part of our inventory. Same with manufacturing overhead. Okay, once they are finished and sold, that's the only time they will go to your income statement as part of our cost of goods sold. Di po ba? So, that's the basic cost flow for product cost naman. Pareho lang. For period cost, kay once they are incurred, they go directly to your income statement. Okay, cost classification for predicting cost behavior. There are different kinds, no? But the most basic will be your variable cost and you have here your fixed costs. Okay, so what are variable costs? No? Variable costs, these are costs that varies in total, but they are constant per unit. Yan, like for example, your phone bill. Okay, your phone bill, the more minutes, okay, that you talked, yan, with the other person, yan, you will have more cost. So that is what you call your variable cost. Ayan, parang text lang, di ba? Okay, the cost per text is 1 peso per text. So it's fixed per unit. Pero it's variable in total. So the more you text, the higher will be your texting expenses. Okay, so ayan, that's your per minute charge for phone charges. Okay, or per text, yan, per text charges if we're talking about texting cost. But then some of you might say, sorry sir, naka-only text naman ako, so it's not a variable cost. That's correct. If naka-only text ka, okay, that is not what you call an example of fixed cost. It's fixed in total. Kahit gaano kadami yung i-text mo, you will still have the same charge. And the more you text, the more you can optimize the cost. Okay, the cost per unit will be decreasing at a decreasing rate. Okay, so ayun. Ito yung pinaka-importante na part dyan, the behavior of your fixed cost per unit. Because this is actually the origin of economies of scale. Can I write that down? Economies of scale. When you are able to maximize your profits and returns by optimizing your fixed cost. Diba? Like for example, what happened in China, Japan, Germany. How do I spell Germany? Germany, and there's one more. France. Ayan. This is not a history lesson, no? So I'm not going to discuss na how it happened, because at some point, okay, the labor in some parts of these countries, no, and the labor is considered as fixed cost. Di ba normally labor should be variable, okay? Pero parang naging reason ito, okay, or solution to a problem in unemployment. Sabi ng gobyerno, o sige, you should be to solve the problem on unemployment, okay, you should employ a minimum number of a person, okay? And because of that, no, a lot of analysts in the business industry, okay, resisted that idea because that's going to be counterproductive, pero that's too costly for the entities. Imagine paying manpower, no, that you are not using. Pero again, sige, para win-win, okay, we will agree to that as long as if they are going to work on overtime, we're not going to pay them overtime rate. So in substance, parang fixed na yung direct labor nila. Nagtratrabaho man sila o hindi, or nag-overtime man sila, okay, the amount of labor cost is already constant. And then from there, okay, sabi ng mga business analyst, this is what we are going to do. Instead of making or basing our production on demand, okay, we just keep on producing. Okay, because the more you produce, the lower will be your fixed cost per unit. And if that's the case, our products will become cheaper. No, okay, let's not use that term. Our products will become more affordable. O, ganun na lang. Baka may magalit kasi sa akin eh. So if they become more affordable, the demand for these products may shift. O, di ba? Ang ganda nung analysis nila, no? Like for example, if you have here a phone, okay, which is worth, let's say, 10,000 pesos, but because of economies of scale, no, from 10,000 pesos, it can now be sold to, let's say, 3,000 pesos. Perhaps the demand will go up. Okay. And yun nga, ano yung nangyari, di ba? Na if you observe, no, China products, they are affordable. Okay, they are more affordable. Why? Because of the optimization of your fixed cost. Anyway, there are more stories attached to that, no, pero yun lang naman yung gusto kong i-emphasize. To summarize, your variable costs, okay, will vary in total, but they are fixed per unit. Your fixed costs naman, they are fixed in total, but they will vary, okay, per unit. Now, in some books, you also have your step, no, stepped variable cost or step fixed cost. Okay, like for example, fixed cost dapat siya, no? It's fixed but only up to a certain point of production because tataas yan eventually. And then at some point, tataas na naman siya. It's supposed to be fixed. Like for example, a rent. Rent for a chilled or chilled. Para cool lang siya, yo. Okay, refrigerated. Frigid daw. Frigerated pala. Refrigerated. Refrigerated warehouse. Ayan. Okay, so let's say it's supposed to be 10,000 per month. Ayan, 10,000 lang. But then, your chilled or your cooling warehouse, ayan, the capacity is only, let's say, 100 gallons. Tama ba? Let's just say up to 1,000 gallons only. So, if your production is, let's say, 90 or 99 gallons or 100, maybe up to 101 or 102 gallons, sabihin mo na. O, basta, pwede mong ayusin siguro, isiksik mo na lang yung pagkaka-Tetris, di ba? Pero kapag sumobra na yan, did I say 100 or 1,000 gallons? Okay, let's say 100 gallons is the capacity. But if you produce, let's say, 110 gallons, one warehouse is no longer enough. So, you have to rent another room or another warehouse. So, tataas na, ayan. Yeah, tataas na ngayon yung warehouse expenses mo. Okay po? So, there you go. That's your steep fixed cost. Steep variable cost naman, step variable cost naman. It's a variable cost pero at some point it is fixed. No? Okay, so, ayun. Okay, assigning cost to cost objects. Okay, we already discussed what are direct costs. They can be traced, okay, to a unit of product. Indirect costs, they cannot be traced. Okay, therefore, they are just, if they cannot be traced, they are allocated. Let me write that down. Okay, allocated or applied. That's why you have the application rate, no, for manufacturing overhead. Cost classification for decision making. This one is not found in your financial statements. Okay, so these are examples of non-GAAP cost. Now, we have to take note that every decision involves a choice between at least two alternatives. You don't make a decision if you only have one. No, it's not even an alternative if you just have one choice. No choice ka na nga eh. 'Di ba? So, ayun. Ayan, only those costs and benefits that differ between alternatives are relevant in a decision. Okay? And, well, take note, all other costs and benefits should be ignored just to simplify the decision-making process. So, dito na po papasok yung concept ng relevance. No? What is a relevant cost? Let me write it down. Relevant cost. A relevant cost is a cost that is relevant. It is a cost that that is avoidable. Let's just describe that. It's avoidable. Avoidable. Why is it avoidable? It varies or it differs between alternatives. Therefore, it makes a significant difference in decision making. Because if a cost doesn't differ between alternatives, what do you have to consider that, no? Like for example, if at first you want to decide where will I enroll, okay? Am I going to study here in our province or will I go to Baguio City? Ganun na lang. Baguio City and study there, okay? So if I go to Baguio City, I'm going to live in a boarding house, okay, with a cost of 5,000 pesos a month. Okay, 5,000 pesos a month for your rent. Okay. What's the decision? Okay, study in the province or study in Baguio. If you study in Baguio, you will incur this cost. Is this a relevant cost? Okay, why? What's the decision? Study in Baguio or study here in the province? The answer is yes, this is relevant. Why? Because it can be avoided. If you study in the province, okay, you're going to avoid this 5,000 peso rent. Okay? So it is relevant. What if you decided to study here in Baguio and then the next decision will be, where will I study? Will I study in UC or will I study in other universities? Diba? O dalawa lang naman ang meron dito sa Baguio, UC and other university. Okay. Question, will this 5,000 be relevant? At that type of decision, it's no longer relevant. Why? Because you cannot avoid this 5,000 pesos. Yun. O sana, nagets nyo yun. Okay, so, let's continue. Differential cost and revenues. Okay, cost and revenues that differ among relatives. And, alternatives pala. And, most of the time, this is the basis for decision making. We use the term differential kapag, ano ba? Ayan, let me write economics. Most of the time sa economics kasi yun eh. Okay, for MS, we use the term relevant cost. Okay, differential costs are always relevant cost. In finance, there's another term for this. It's called marginal. Marginal. Okay, you have your marginal cost. Okay, diba? If you have axiom number, I think it's axiom number 4. Marginal cost, only what changes counts. Ay, mali pala ako. Marginal cost will be for economics. Economics. In finance, okay, in finance, they use differential. So, this one is on financial management. So, if you have a job 1,500 per month and there's an offering of 2,000, what is relevant for decision making? The difference of 500. But then, if there is additional information na cost, okay, this one is also relevant because this one is additional or differential or relevant. It is avoidable cost. Okay? And analyzing this further, the total net relevant cost will be $200. Okay, which is favorable. And opportunity cost. Actually, opportunity cost are not cost. They are actually benefits. No, but they were forgone by choosing another alternative. Okay? Parang love life mo lang. This is the one that got away by choosing another alternative. Okay? So, ayun. An example for opportunity cost is, let's say, ano ba? A benefit that was forgone or given up. Kunyari, ngayon, okay, you're supposed to be playing, Among Us. Yun ba yung title ng sikat na naman na game ngayon? Among Us or PUBG. Okay, masaya ka sana ngayon. Pero hindi, okay? You decided to watch this video. Okay? So, this one is a benefit forgone by choosing another alternative. Or you should be working part-time right now. Okay? Maybe to a fast food joint, ganon. Or to a shop. Pero hindi, you decided to enroll and make your life miserable, okay, during these pandemic times. Okay? So, that's now, no? The opportunity cost. Okay? The salary that you should have been receiving sana, okay, pero hindi, you chose to enroll and not work at this time. Ganun yun. So, that's your opportunity cost. You also have your sunk cost. Okay, sunk costs are always irrelevant. Opportunity costs are always relevant. No? It's always relevant. But sunk cost is always irrelevant in decision making because sunk cost is historical. And if it is historical in nature, they cannot be changed in the future. Ayun. cannot be changed in the future. Therefore, this is not avoidable. Not avoidable. Always not avoidable. Diba? Napagdaanan mo. Gaya ng ex mo, sunk cost na yung ex mo. Ang relevant yung opportunity cost. Okay, wait lang. Let's try to put this together. If sunk costs are always historical. This statement is true. Okay? Historical costs are irrelevant. True or false? Irrelevant. This one is also true. So are we saying sunk cost is irrelevant? Irrelevant? The answer is true. Okay? So if historical costs are irrelevant, the next question is, are all future costs relevant naman? Baliktarin natin. It depends. Okay? So this one is false. Not all future costs are relevant. It's relevant only if it is avoidable. Okay, so let's continue. Summary of the types of cost classification for financial reporting. Let's review, also known as GAAP cost. You have your manufacturing and non-manufacturing. Okay, pag sinabi nating manufacturing, direct materials, direct labor, and you have here your overhead. This one, direct materials and direct labor, these are your direct costs, also known as traceable costs, known as product cost, together with your overhead. Yan, product cost din yan. These are your product cost, your total manufacturing cost, lahat yan. Okay, this one is not traceable. Okay, therefore these are just allocated or applied costs. Okay, non-manufacturing, you have your selling costs. You have here your administrative or other operating costs. Predicting cost behavior, you have your fixed cost and you have here your variable cost. Maybe you might want to add your stepped variable cost and stepped fixed cost. Assigning cost to cost object, na-discuss na natin yan, kay traceable and allocated cost. And then, for decision making, you have the relevant cost. A cost will only be relevant if it is avoidable. Okay, so, ganun yun. Okay, you also have your opportunity cost, okay, and you have here your sunk cost. Ayan, so, let's continue. What about these other costs like idle time? An idle time or cost for idle time are costs that are incurred during idle time. Kailan yun? Kapag meron kang machine breakdowns or for example, nawalan ka ng kuryente, nawalan ka ng internet, idle time, nga ka na lang, di ba? And material shortages, okay? Now, the labor costs incurred during idle time are treated as manufacturing overhead. Bakit? Pinasweldohan mo yung mga tao mo. But take note that direct labor cost, should be traceable to your product. Question, during idle time, were you able to come up with a product? Wala. Since there are no products, okay, that's going to be the basis for tracing this cost, then it's not classified as direct labor. Instead, you'll reclassify that as manufacturing overhead. And that will be absorbed by the other products that are produced during the period. You also have overtime. Okay, overtime premiums should be considered as part of manufacturing overhead and allocated to all our outputs. No? Imagine if let's say your quota for the day is 10 units. Okay. 10 circular tables. But at the end of the day, you were just able to come up with 8 tables. Patay. So sabi ng supervisor, pare, can you spread some overtime na lang? Overtime mo na lang yung dalawa para maging 10. Okay? Syempre, there will be overtime rate, which means the cost per table for those that were worked on overtime will be more than the cost of tables, okay, during the regular periods. Tama? So, when it comes to sales, no, bebenta mo, to your customer, this one is 300 pesos per table. This one is 350 pesos. Kung nagkamali na naman ako. Okay, so this one is 350 pesos. Sasabihin ng customer, why are you selling this for 50 pesos more than this table? They have the same function and same features. You cannot say, this one is more expensive because na overtime sila. Okay, so you cannot say that. Okay, so what are you going to do? The overtime rate for these two tables should be allocated to all our outputs. Okay, same with labor fringe benefits, okay, like insurance, mediocre, okay, these are all part of your manufacturing overhead. Why? Because you cannot directly trace them to specific products. Quality of conformance. Ayan na, papasok na ngayon yung basic quality costs. Okay? Quality costs are costs incurred to maintain the quality of your product. Actually, there are 4. You have your prevention cost, appraisal cost, and then you also have your internal failure cost and external failure cost. Now, let's discuss them one by one. Your prevention costs are quality costs that supports activities whose purpose is to reduce the number of defects. These are actually proactive costs, no? Like for example, if you're going to incur training costs, ayan, training para mas maganda yung product, not just coming up with a better output, but better handling of materials, better processing, which will result to a better quality for our product. Okay, so that's what you call prevention costs. Okay, if you're going to install equipment for safety measures o yung mga ganun upgrades, they can be considered as prevention cost. An appraisal cost, okay, is incurred because you want to see if there are defects during the process. Parang parehas lang sila. The only difference is that prevention cost is incurred before the start of the process, while appraisal cost, okay, is incurred before or during the process. Like how do you identify defective products before they are shipped? Kunyari sa cellphone na lang, you have the twist test. Okay, twist test, you have the drop test. What else? You have your scratch test. Okay, scratch test. And okay, to get your IP ratings, di ba? You have your, like for example, IP68. If you want your product to be IP68 certified, yan. 6 is for the solid materials, okay, para sa dust yan. 8 is for the liquid components naman. Hindi components. There's a term for that. Basta para sa tubig or waterproofing. So if your product is IP68, it's dust proof and it is waterproof. So you have to conduct tests for your products bago siya ma-certify na ganyan. That's all part of your appraisal cost. Okay? Now, let's say your products are already finished. Now, before you ship them, you are going to incur costs to check if there are some defects before you ship them. That's now your internal failure costs. Okay, take note, they are incurred before shipping. This one is incurred after shipping. So, let's say, kunyari, tapos na yung product mo, nabuo na. And then at random, 5% of your output will be checked again. May keypad check, meron ka ano to, battery draining check, may mga ganon, output check. Okay, okay. And if in the process kita mo na ko patay, there are some products that needs to be reworked. Oh, ayan, that's all part of your internal failure cost, pati yung reworking. Okay, before shipment. Assuming it's already shipped, okay, and then one of the customers or a group, no, from your current sales, no, from your current customers complained that your device is not working properly. Okay, sumasabog daw yung battery. O, patay. So, they have to be returned and covered by warranties. Those costs, no, those costs will be classified as external failure cost. This is one of the most expensive quality costs, okay? Aside from expensive, okay, because of the cost that you're going to incur, expensive because of the opportunity costs, no? Imagine, let's say you released a new product, okay, and then out of 9, let's say all of these, no, all of these customers are willing to buy your product, and then let's say one of them incurred a problem, di ba? Naku, hindi na ako masaya dito. So what will happen? You might lose the demand coming from the other 8 customers. This is what you call opportunity cost, no? Your lost revenue because of a defective product coming from just one customer. O, di ba? So, yun, napaka-expensive. Mawawala yung revenue. There's a way to manage this cost. Anyway, these are just some of the examples. You can go back to them later. Okay, there's a way to manage this cost. Okay, and the best way is to invest on earlier cost. Like, for example, in this case, no, if this is your total cost, if you want to reduce this, okay, you invest on earlier cost. So what happened? Okay, they invested on appraisal cost. By increasing this cost, although they were not able to reduce internal failure cost, but they were able to reduce the external failure cost. Siguro if you invest more on prevention cost, no, perhaps mababawasan mo rin yung appraisal. Baka not just appraisal but also internal and external failure cost. Okay? Now, in this example, as you can see, they invested on appraisal cost. Ay, pareho lang pala. Tapos, na-reduce nila yung external failure cost. Okay, so, ayun. Okay, uses of quality cost information. They help managers see the financial significance of defects. Okay, identify relative importance or quality problems, and help managers see whether their quality costs are poorly distributed. If you are going to ask me, okay, the most important use for this quality cost information is they serve as an indicator. They are good indicators, okay, of efforts to maintain the quality of a product. Ayan. Syempre, okay, the cost that has the highest value, okay, means that baka may problema doon sila nag-e-effort. Diba? So, it's now easier to identify where to start your investigation if you want to improve the quality of your process or your product. Okay, so, I guess that's it. Ano pa ba? Our canvas is not yet up and running. I think it's up and running pero hindi pa siya full blast because there are still some materials that I have to curate. Now, please feel free to ask questions in the comment section below. It could be at the comment section of this video because this one will be uploaded in YouTube. This one will also be uploaded in Facebook, so you can ask questions there. Once this is uploaded in Canvas, you can also ask questions, no, in Canvas for discussion. Okay po. So, I guess that's it. And thank you.